So I finally played and finished Dragon Quest V. I'll be honest, it's been one of those games that's been in my peripheral vision for like over a decade, and I'm so glad I finally got to it. I mean, if you spent any time talking with Dragon Quest fans, you've probably heard 5 described as like the emotional entry. It's going to be the one that hits harder and the one that stays with you in a way that others don't. And that kind of reputation naturally builds expectations, especially if you already love this series. And at this point, I've played a good amount of Dragon Quest games, 1 through 4 in the last year, and then 11 a couple years ago. So I thought I had a decent handle on, what I was walking into. Familiar combat, classic structure, simple presentation, having played the DS version for this review, and kind of a straightforward chosen hero arc. But what I didn't expect is how immediately personal Dragon Quest V would feel, and how intentional it is about telling a story that unfolds over the course of one's entire life. By the time I reached the ending, this didn't feel like just another JRPG I crossed off my list. It felt like a story I had really spent time inside. So yes, in today's video, we're talking about Dragon Quest V and my experiences and thoughts and feelings about that. As always, before we get to that, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave your comments down below and leave your thoughts down below. I would love to hear from you guys. Have you played this game? Are you looking forward to playing it if you haven't played it before? And yeah, let's get to the video. I'm going to try and be kind of spoiler conscious, but if you want to know absolutely nothing about this game, I would say probably don't watch this. But yeah, let's get to the video. So the biggest difference between Dragon Quest V and the other games that have come before it, especially really referring to 1 through 4, is the focus overall. Dragon Quest 1 through 4 absolutely have stories, but they're built different, really, I think, to support exploration and progression, especially for the early entries. Dragon Quest IV was really where story started to build, but 5, in my opinion, flips that relationship entirely. The world, the systems, and even the pacing exist truly in service of the story. Right from the opening moments, the game tells you this isn't a typical Chosen One setup. I mean, you don't start as a hero, you start as a child named Abel. Well, most commonly named Abel in like most of the Japanese versions, or most of the remakes anyway. And you do so while traveling alongside your father, Pancraz, who really reminds me of Ortega from Dragon Quest III. I'm sure that's done on purpose. There's no prophecy hanging over your head yet. Really, the only prophecy is you as the player probably knowing that there's going to be some sort of chosen hero or legendary hero, but that's besides the point. Instead, you're learning about the world the same way as a kid would, by following somebody you trust. The framing alone from the beginning really makes everything feel more grounded. You're not moving from town to town because the game tells you to. You're doing it because your father is leading you, and you're seeing the world through his guidance. It's subtle, but it's really effective. And that sense of stability is really important because Dragon Quest V takes it away really early, and it doesn't rush past the consequences. So in the setup phase, you're going from town to town, you meet your childhood friend Bianca and your cat Saber, and you go to a haunted mansion, and that slowly builds your relationship with Bianca and Saber, which are to be explored later. But like I said, that stability is taken away really early on because the death of Pancraz, it's one of the most impactful moments in this game, and it happens at the end of what I would call Chapter 1. One of your other childhood friends has been kidnapped, and he's gone to save him, and you've gone after your father, and yeah, things just don't pan out. A real statement piece in the story. And your father, Pancraz, I mean, he's not just a party member that you lose. He's safety. He's that safety net that you have as a kid. He's experience. He's the reason that you feel protected. And when he's killed trying to protect you, that loss echoes through the rest of the story. And what follows is even harsher, in my opinion, enslavement. So the hero's childhood ends, and you and your friend are just taken away as slaves. It's really crazy because it's a very traumatic experience. The game doesn't soften this move or quickly move to the next fun moment. It sits in that, and it lets you feel powerless. And that's the moment that Dragon Quest V stops feeling like another Dragon Quest and starts feeling like something deeply personal. Now, one of the most important things to understand about Dragon Quest V is that, these chapters within the story, it's not just a storytelling device. It's about becoming something, becoming a hero, or just becoming somebody who you're truly meant to be. And I think this game does this really effectively. The childhood chapter is about dependence. I mean, you're guided by your father, protected by him, and largely reacting to a world that you don't really understand yet. You don't make big choices here. You survive. You do some kid stuff, ghost hunting in a mansion, rescuing your cat, fun stuff, really. And when that safety is violently taken away, the game forces you forward into adulthood without really giving you time to process it. And that transition really matters because adulthood in Dragon Quest V isn't framed as empowerment right away. It's framed as like searching or soul searching. You're no longer being led by anybody, but you're also not really fully sure who you are yet. You're rebuilding a life after loss. Your childhood's been taken away from you. And one of the most important moments in that rebuilding process is the decision of who you choose to marry. Now, this is where Dragon Quest V, in my opinion, does something really bold, especially for that time. Instead of treating marriage like a brief story beat or like an optional flavor, the game really makes a defining choice here. You're asked midway through the game to commit to somebody who will shape not just your emotional journey, but your actual family, your party composition, and the future of the story itself. You're given 3 choices, each representing a different path the hero could take, and what's important is that none of them are presented as like wrong. It just asks you, who do you think that life makes sense with in the game? And for me, that answer was your childhood friend, Bianca. I mean, her role in the story is rooted in the shared history you have. She's somebody you knew as a child, someone who was there before everything went wrong, and choosing her didn't feel like choosing a party member. It feels like choosing continuity. After so much lost, that connection I really think mattered to me. There's a softness to how she's written and a sense to how she understands the hero, not as like this legendary figure, because nobody figures the hero as a legendary figure, but as the person he's always been. That choice really felt natural, and I really think that the game respects you in that choice. Your wife doesn't disappear into the background. I mean, she fights alongside you. She contributes to battle. And when the story moves forward into fatherhood, that choice echoes even further. Your children inherit traits based on who you married. The game quietly reinforces the idea that commitment isn't just emotional, it shapes the future in tangible ways. Of course, some serious life lessons here happening in Dragon Quest V of all things. Now, this is where the chapter structure of Dragon Quest V really shines. Childhood is about being protected, and adulthood is about choosing who you walk beside, and fatherhood is about protecting others. That's the 3rd chapter of the game, and living with the consequences of those choices you made earlier. Now, when your children finally join the party, the story completes its arc. You're no longer the center of the world, you're part of something larger, and that's when Dragon Quest V delivers the most powerful subversion. It's the realization that you are actually not the chosen hero. Your son is. It's really cool. There's a moment in the game where you go to Helmutpucher, which is where the Zenithian helmet is held. And you go to try it on because you might have an idea that you're the legendary hero, but it actually doesn't fit. And that's really interesting. And that really just reaffirms this whole theme of support and destiny. It was never about you. You were never meant to be the chosen one. It was meant to be your son. You were meant to raise the legendary hero. And because the game allowed you to choose who you shared your life with, that revelation doesn't feel like a twist. It feels like an outcome. It's a really great one at that. Now, hang on, before we get any further, I would usually say, don't forget to subscribe. 90% of the people that watch my channel aren't subscribed, etc. But if you want to support the channel in a more meaningful way and you want to get more out of it, I would encourage you guys to check out the Patreon that I have. I've just opened it. I've got a couple different tiers, some of which involve like a thank you handwritten letter that I'll be sending out, early access to videos, credits in the videos as well, and input on some stuff as well. So I think there's a lot there. And if you guys want to support more, I would love to have you. It goes a long way into keeping the lights on here and keeping this channel moving forward. So more Dragon Quest V right now. Now let's sidestep from the story and the themes of the game and talk a little bit more about the systems of the game, the combat, and more importantly, the monster recruitment, which was something that I thought was pretty cool. So mechanically, Dragon Quest V is still very much a classic Dragon Quest game. Turn-based combat, clear roles, and steady progression really form the core of the experience. But the way that party building works here reinforces the game's theme in subtle ways. One of the standout themes for me was monster recruitment. Unlike Pokemon, where emotional attachment and collection are really the core loop, monster recruitment in Dragon Quest V is about function. Now, it is also important to point out that Dragon Quest V came out years before Pokemon, so who's to say that Pokemon wasn't inspired by Dragon Quest V? Who knows? So you're encouraged to think strategically. Who heals, who hits hard, and who can survive longer battles. Early monsters like Adams the Apple are helpful, but the real standout for me was Gudeian, the Slime Knight. He is one of those party members who feels useful in almost every situation. Reliable healing, solid offense, and great longevity. He reminded me a lot of Kirill from Dragon Quest IV, a dependable hybrid character who really complements the main party perfectly and somebody who was a long stay in my party for pretty much the entire game. Now, what's interesting, of course, is that I didn't emotionally bond with the monsters, and I don't think you're meant to. They're not really like the emotional core of the story. Instead, they function as part of a larger idea of found family, which is, I think, one of the more subtle underlying themes of the story here. They're allies, not pets. They fight with you, not for you. That distinction fits Dragon Quest V perfectly. And Dragon Quest V's difficulty curve is fairly traditional, but it's thoughtfully aligned with the narrative. Early on, the game hits a little hard, and that's intentional. You're weak because you are weak. You're a kid, and you're trying to survive in a world that doesn't care how unfair it feels. As you age, you gain party members and expand your options, and combat becomes more manageable. Grinding, especially Metal Slimes, plays a huge role, as it always does in every Dragon Quest, but it never felt out of place. Progression feels steady and earned and incredibly natural. Now, what really stood out is how the party dynamic changes over time. I mean, by the end of the game, you're no longer fighting alone or even as a small group of adventurers. You're fighting alongside your spouse, your children, and the allies you've gathered along the way. Saving the world becomes a family effort, and that's something that I've never experienced in a JRPG. Well, Dragon Quest XI does kind of lean into that a little bit, but still, I really liked that. Now, one of the biggest strengths of Dragon Quest V is how it handles the themes of the game without ever really explicitly spelling them out. It's all very subtle, and if you're playing it and you've got half of a brain, it's very easy to pick up on what this game is saying. Love, responsibility, loss, and legacy are all present, but the game never stopped to explain what it's trying to say. Instead, it lets actions and consequences speak for themselves. Pankraz dies protecting his son without hesitation or regret. The hero spends much of his life chasing the idea of becoming the legendary hero, only to learn that it's okay that he isn't. The real chosen one turns out to be his son. Like I mentioned before, the moment at Helmaputra where the Zenithian helmet doesn't fit, it's handled with some really great restraint. There's no dramatic reveal, just a quiet realization that reframes the entire journey. Being the hero was never the point. Being the father of the hero was. That idea feels incredibly mature, especially for a game released when it was originally. It reframes heroism as something a little bit more quiet and more selfless, and it's really sticking with me even after just rolling the credits recently. Now, as you can tell here, I've played Dragon Quest V on the DS, and I thought it was great. Presentation was great. There's a couple different options for how you can play this game. Of course, the Super Famicom entry, a English patched Super Nintendo version, the DS version, or the PlayStation 2 version, which was Japan exclusive, but there are English patches available for it. Or something that I'm hoping is coming out in the next year or so would be an HD 2D version. Not to say that I didn't enjoy the DS version, because I thought it was perfectly fine for what it was. But after playing some of the HD 2D entries, especially Dragon Quest II HD 2D, I know if you watch my videos, I won't shut up about it because I really love how that game was presented. It just lets me kind of have this preview for what this game could be and how much bigger and, dare I say, better and bolder that Dragon Quest V could really be with this HD 2D treatment. Think of this game with modern lighting, expressive sprites, and richer environments, voice acting as well. I mean, of course, I mentioned this with my Dragon Quest IV review and kind of retrospective video. Hearing the different dialects with voice acting would be amazing. Dragon Quest V's emotional moments could hit even harder. Scenes like Pankraz's death or the petrification of you and your wife would be absolutely devastating in the best possible way. It also feels like a game that would immensely benefit from this treatment. Again, not because it needs it, but because the foundation is already so strong. Think of a game like Dragon Quest II HD 2D, here I go again. That original game was so basic, but that foundation was there. And the team behind the HD 2D treatment really just made that game so special. But also, if you're not into like playing this game again or waiting for an HD 2D treatment, there is also the Dragon Quest movie called Dragon Quest Your Story, which is pretty much like a parallel version of the game and the story, which unfortunately I'd already watched long before I played Dragon Quest V, so there was a lot that I kind of already knew going into it, so I felt that some of the realizations and conclusions, I guess, were a little bit spoiled, but, you know, not to say that I didn't enjoy them as much, but I probably could have enjoyed them more if I didn't watch the movie, but that's neither here nor there. So that movie exists, and it kind of complements the story of Dragon Quest V.
So Dragon Quest V is absolutely a game that I finished. But
more than that, it's a story that I lived through and loved. It's patient, it's thoughtful, and it's emotionally confident. It does not rush, it does not over-explain, and it trusts you to connect with its characters and themes on your own terms. Especially me being a parent, I really just, I don't know, a lot of these themes kind of hit harder than I would think if you weren't a parent. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I'm a softie and I love my son. So why wouldn't I really engage emotionally with these themes in this video? So if you've never played a Dragon Quest before, this is probably one of the best entry points in the series. And if you're already a fan, obviously it's a reminder of just how powerful this genre can be when it's willing to slow down and tell a more human, relatable, and emotional story. And by the end, Dragon Quest V doesn't feel like a checklist accomplishment. It feels like a chapter of life you've briefly stepped into, and one that's going to be really hard to move on from. So that's my time with Dragon Quest V. I really enjoyed it, and I'm so grateful that I was able to pick it up and play it and just experience this game that a lot of people have hyped up. And it's one of the few games that I've played that has actually lived up to the hype and then some. So thank you so much for watching today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Join the Patreon if you want to support, get behind the scenes access and get videos early. And yeah, we'll see you on another video next week. Bye-bye.